Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Magic Monday. It is a super fantastic, sparkling day and a great day to be starting our brand new week full of adventure. Yes, so what's on your agenda this week? What is it about this week that is going to make it magical for you? I know that from the Networking Riches that I just finished this weekend, that there are some people who are still processing all the stuff they learned and the impact it is going to have on their lives and their businesses. So I know that they are off to a magical start because they have got a new perspective on things. So that is a great way to have a magical start to the week. So what is your magical start to the week? Mine is that I got clarity on what I need to be doing, which was just amazing because that breakthrough on Saturday, man, I'm still getting goosebumps about that thing. It was just incredible. I don't know. I hope the person who was having the breakthrough zone got as much out of it as I did. That's all I can say, is that it was just absolutely incredible. It impacted me in a way that no breakthrough has ever had before, including when I myself have been in that seat and been given advice and ideas and brainstorming and all that stuff. I have never had a breakthrough zone impact me the way that did. That was, I'm still like, wow. But it's part of life. It's learning these things. It's knowing when you have those breakthroughs and everything else. So what is in store for you for this magical week? What magic are you getting up to this morning to get your week started correctly? We've already been up, had breakfast, been out for a walk, showered, dressed. What else have we done today, Zeph? No, she's already on patrol up on the windowsill, just laying there with her head on the edge of her bed, looking out the window, ears twitching because she knows she's been talked about. But it was actually a beautiful morning this morning. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold. There was a little bit of humidity in the air, but it wasn't. Most mornings when we've stepped out lately, it has been almost like stepping into a sauna at times. Sometimes a dry sauna, sometimes a wet wet sauna. It's either been a dry heat or a wet heat. This morning it was beautiful. It was felt like we could have walked for a lot longer, but we didn't because we had people to come see and say hi and all of that sort of stuff. So it was a very magical start to the day. Up early, got a lot of stuff done. Listening to what am I listening to right now? I'm back to listening to Top Gun, which is written by Dan Penderson, who was the guy who founded the Top Gun program for the Navy. So I'm listening to the story about how that all came about, and it's quite fascinating. And it's a book I started a while ago on audio, and like normal, it got set aside for a little bit, and then I came back to it for a little bit, and it got set aside again. It's just how my mind operates. It's not the fact that the book is uninteresting or anything. It is actually quite interesting. And right now they're talking about Vietnam, which is it's the year before the founding of Top Gun. So we're learning all about the stuff that was going on at the time, the issues that they were having. It's basically setting the scene for how they came about to decide that they needed a program like Top Gun, which I did get to watch this weekend. Yes, I did. I did get to watch that this weekend. So it's interesting to always learn the history of things. I'm reading a book, in the middle of reading a book now called WITSEC, which is all about the Witness Protection Program and how that got started, and how it's maintained over the years and everything. So it's interesting. I'm just learning all this stuff, all this history, and the reason I'm learning all this history is so that as a genealogist, you have to find out the history of places. Like when you are researching records and stuff, what was the history like in that area at that time, and how did they record their stuff? How did they record what was happening? How did they record the births, deaths, and marriages? How did they record the funerals? How did they record the town hall meetings? How did they record land deeds? All of that sort of stuff. You need to know the history in that area to give you some perspective on what was going on at the time and all that, which is why I love history so much, because it gives you that perspective to that place and time that you're researching. And if it happens to be that you're researching your own ancestor at that place and time in history, it gives you an insight into their life. And if they haven't left their story behind, there is a lot of gaps. I have, what is she? A cousin. I would have to work out the relation, but she is a cousin. She was my great grandfather's half sister, so she'd be a great aunt. And she lived in the manor house in Warboys in Huntingdonshire, and she wrote letters to friends of hers about her life there, and that all those letters were gathered and put into a book and published. And my great aunt actually had an actual physical copy of that book, and my mum borrowed it one day and went and made 2 copies of the book. I have one of them and she has one of them, so that we're able to read what life was like in the manor house during the 1800s. It's actually quite fascinating. And when you read back at that stuff, you get a really good perspective on how things were. You may have perceived ideas on what things were like during that lifetime, but when you actually read it in somebody's own hand, something that they have written, it gives you a whole different outlook on things, which is why it is so important. Good segue. Why it is so important that you tell your story. What was it like growing up where you live? What was it, where were you born? Where did you live throughout your life? Why? What was it like? What was school like? And today, all of these things about life, how did you meet your spouse? When did you guys decide to get married? How many kids did you decide to have? How did you bring up your kids? What lessons did you bring from your parents that you brought into your own parenting skills? There's a lot that we can learn from people in history about the lives that they lived. This is another reason I love reading autobiographies, because when I read the autobiography, it is the person themselves telling the story. Biographies are people who may have input from the actual person they're writing about, but a lot of it is fact gathering and kind of filling in the blanks a little bit. And it may be from personal diaries. They may write the biography from personal diaries as well. But there is some input somewhere along the way from the actual person that they're researching, or there may not be. There may not be. It's just all that information gathering, because usually when the person they're writing about is somebody who is a historical figure in some way, shape, or form. So there's a lot of documentation out and around about that person. So they take that, they bring it all together and put it in a book, into a book that we can now read. But the autobiographies are the best because it's the person's own words. It is their story about their life, how they got to be where they were, what it was like going through, being the person that they were, and doing the things, whatever it is that they're famous for. What is that connection? So when you tell your story, you are giving your descendants, those generations coming after you, what it was like to live here and now in this current times. And you may not think it may not have impact, but your story is going to have an impact in somebody's life. It may be somebody who is related to you. It could be it has an impact with somebody in the here and now that needs to hear your story. It could be somebody 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now. Look at books by people such as Napoleon Hill, David Schwartz, that was written back in the 1930s. Those books, Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Thinking Big, still have impact today. And it doesn't mean to say you've got to go out and write a book with all these business ideas. If you are in business for yourself, are you journaling your adventures? I just finished listening to The Virgin Way by Richard Branson. He always carries a notebook with him, and he writes down everything in that notebook. And he's got piles of notebooks from over the years. There's business ideas in there. There's concepts in there. There's things that worked, things that didn't work, thoughts, feelings, appointments, notes from meetings that he's had. And he's been able to correct people on stuff, and they turn around and say, well, you told us, and he goes back to his notebook and go, actually, I have written here on this day and this is what I've got written. And nowhere in there did I say that. But you did say that you were going to do this and you haven't done it yet, type of thing. So so what is your journey to get from where you are now to getting your business up and running, or from where you are now in your career? What made you choose that path of career? What made you go that particular route? What made you choose that business format? Not the business format, the business concept, and take that concept and turn it into a business. What was that turning point for you? These are things that future generations are going to need to know because they can learn from it. And when you got books, when you look at things like Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Thinking Big, and all those other great books that are out there about business and development and things that have been around for such a long time. I mean, those books are going to be turning 100 soon. Can you imagine that? Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Thinking Big was written in the 1930s. They're just over 10 years away from becoming a century book, which still has impact today. So you can see how, and you're probably going, oh yes, but da-da-da-da-da-da. No. They did their books on their terms. You do books on your terms. Don't just turn around and go, oh yeah, but they had, yeah, no. Excuses. Yeah. So your question to tell your story today, your tell your story question of the day today is, how did you get to school as a child? Did you ride a bike to school? Did you walk to school? Did you take a school bus? Did you stop along the way and pick up a friend if you were walking? Did you always have somebody you would sit next to on the bus when you're doing that? Did you have a group of you that would ride your bikes together to school? How did you get to school as a child? Who did you walk with? Who did you have, what did you guys talk about and that sort of thing? Going to school, we always walked. We walked. It was as simple as that. We walked. Occasionally, we may have gotten a ride to school, but I don't really remember if we did or not. We always walked. And the longest I had to walk to school was about 20 to 30 minutes. It was no big deal back then. It was, you'd see kids riding their bikes occasionally. Once or twice I got to take my bike with me. We got to ride it to school. That was kind of like a special treat type of thing. But we basically walked. We walked everywhere when I was a kid. And the day I got my bike, I was like, whoo, freedom. Oh my gosh. We're going to save that question for another day. I've got a really good story on that one about bikes. Yes, I got a couple of good stories on bikes, Helen, and biking and cycling. Yes, we'll talk about those then. But how did you get to school? Did you drive? When you got your license, did you drive to school, or did you still catch the bus? Did you still walk? We, as kids, we walked all the time. We walked everywhere. When we got our bikes and stuff, we'd start riding our bikes, but not to school. We weren't allowed to take our bikes to school. We walked everywhere. We walked 20 to 30 minutes. I had a middle school I had to walk to. I think was about 20 to 30 minutes from the house. I think that was the longest one I ever had to walk to. And you know how you always hear that story from your grandparents that they talk about how they walked uphill both ways to school in snow and bare feet and in snow and all of that sort of stuff. I was actually able to tell my kids, to tell my stepsons that story one time. And they said, I suppose you walked uphill both ways to school in the rain. I said, to school? And I said, actually, I did. And they looked at me and went, what? How can you do that? And I said, well, I lived on this hill. School was on this hill. I had to walk down this hill and up this hill to get to school. Then I had to do the reverse route. So I did walk uphill both ways to school, to and from school. And they just looked, they had nothing to say. They had nothing to say. But, there was times when I was walking to school that I would walk by a friend's house and I would stop in and pick them up along the way to school. And it made the trips to school fun at that point. Because there was times when my middle brother, I've got two brothers, and they're both younger than me. So the older of the two brothers, Craig, there were times that him and I would walk to school together because we happened to be going to the same school. But most of the time, when I got to middle school and high school and stuff, he wasn't walking to school with me because he was in a different school. But, we used to walk to school. 5 years old, we're walking to school. I know it wouldn't happen these days. 5-year-olds by themselves walking to school? Yeah, that ain't going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, so how did you get to school as a child? Did you have people that you sat next to, certain people, did your friends you sat next to on the bus? Did you sit by yourself on the bus? Did you walk to school? Did you walk by yourself? Did you walk with friends? Did you pick friends up along the way? Remember one time when we were living in Invercargill, I was walking to school one day and I had a friend who would meet me at the corner. And we had to cross this busy street to get to the dairy, which is like a 7-Eleven, because he had to pick up something. He had to go in and buy something for his lunch. And then we came out. We're standing there at the curb. We look both ways. No cars coming. He steps out, and the dairy's on a corner, and his car runs through the stop sign around the corner and hits him. he got up and he was running around holding on to his butt where he got hit, and his hip where he got hit, and everything else. The ambulances came and all of that sort of stuff, and he got all checked, taken to hospital, all checked out, and his mother came down, and then she walked me to school. But after that, I was late to school every day after that, and they couldn't figure out why. And it's because that accident had an impact on my life. Seeing a friend, he stepped off before I did, but seeing a friend, and I was 6 at the time, seeing him being hit by a car, I would get to the side of the road, and my parents told me this. I don't remember doing this, but it's given me a lot of patience when I'm waiting at a stop sign to turn in the car. It gives me a lot of patience when I'm, for lights to change and that sort of things. And it did affect me when I first started learning to drive. And I had totally forgotten about that incident until the driving instructor I had was talking to my dad about it, about how patiently I would wait at a stop sign to move the car out. And my dad told him about this incident when I had seen a friend right in front of me get hit by a car. And he said that had an effect. He said she was late to school every day after that because she would get to the road, and I did have a main road to cross, and I would look and I would see a car coming in the distance. Now I had more than enough time to get across that road, back again and back across. But because I saw that car, I would stand and wait until it had gone past, by which stage there was another car coming from the other direction, which I would then have to, I don't remember any of that, standing at the side of the road waiting for these cars to go past. But, and I didn't realize that the impact it had on me growing up as a child, because I was always cautious about that, about crossing streets and making sure I crossed at the pedestrian crossings and stuff. And, I'm on the pedestrian crossing, they have to stop. But then when I came to learning to drive, we would be in the car there and we'd be waiting to turn from a side street onto a main street. And I would very patiently wait until there was a really big break in order to pull out. And some of the times that Brad was driving would scare the crap out of me, because he would take the turn and my side of the car would be facing whatever car was coming. And I would think that was way too close. But he always made it across safely and all of that, with nobody having to slow down or anything else. But it was that thought of I am on the impact side. So it has affected me over time. And it's just, it's something that I didn't realize was impacting me so much. Oh my gosh, I have to go. I got to go. Have a super fantastic sparkling day. I am late for my other call. Hei konera.